Thank you, Barbara. Can we give her another round of applause? Isn't she doing a great job? I was listening intently to the presentations, and I have to admit, I got real nervous, and not because of anything that was said up there. Was I reached into my pocket and I could not find my cell phone. So normally that would not be a problem, except for Jason has my cell phone, don't you, Jason? What you learn with having a spouse or someone you take care of or a family member that has Alzheimer's is contact. The inability to know whether, in fact, they're all right. I dare say it is nothing more scarier than wondering whether that person will remember you when you get home, will know the person that's there with them, and whether, in fact, the person there with them will take care of them the way that you want them to. So I often get nervous. And when I feel sorry for myself, I remember that I have Jason, I have Teresa, I have Lisa, I have Courtney, I have a government that undergirds and helps me get through this situation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. I think it is fitting that we are here at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and that they are putting this on about this very much needed discussion around Alzheimer's. My wife and I, Krista Beverly, started our professional career as CBC fellows. We were senior fellows right out of law school, newly married, and this was the job that she wanted. She wanted to change people's lives, not like me. I wanted to run for office so I could stand up before folks. She wanted to change policies, and she did it. She worked on Capitol Hill. She was a successful lawyer and lobbyist. She was a senior staff. She was director of government affairs for the United Negro College Fund. And by the time she was 48, she could not work anymore. At first, as was said, the diagnosis was maybe she's depressed. She was very healthy, highly educated, so it must be depression. And for 2 years, my family and I, mostly my girls who were at home at the time, struggled with mommy not wanting to leave her room, struggled with mommy leaving notes about what she wanted to be done with her jewelry and things, and struggled with mommy leaving daddy notes on what to do in case of a financial emergency, which she knew that I needed very much since I never paid attention to any of our finances. I couldn't even pay the Verizon bill because I didn't know the number. I never had to. She did it all. We had a good friend, and we talk about diagnosis, and they had talked about that earlier. I said this last night, and I say it everywhere I go, and I mentioned the doctor's name on purpose. Dr. Kevin Ford, who was a good friend of ours, and is a good friend of ours, happened to go to Howard University with my wife and I, and his wife, happened to go to medical school at the same time we were in law school, and so he knew my wife for a number of years, and when we started to see these evidence that something was wrong, and since she knew that I never set up a doctor's appointment in my life because she did it all, I tricked her into going with me with a very true statement. I told her I was afraid to go to the doctor, that they might give me a shot, and I'm afraid of needles. And I know she would go. She went with me, and the doctor and I had decided that we were going to give her an exam. We were going to trick her. And so when he got there, and I asked her to come into the room with me so she could hold my hand, I mentioned that she was getting lost going to places, not just forgetting her keys, but got lost going to Richmond, Virginia, where she lived there almost her entire life. And he said, well, let me just check out you real quick. Did the tests that we see up there, the cognizant test, and she passed it. But what he said to me next changed our life forever. He said, something's wrong with her. Because the Krista Beverly that I know answers questions like that. There's a split delay. And he bothered us and harassed us, me mostly, for 2 years to get her constantly tested. He also advised us to get prepared just in case. Most African Americans don't do that. We didn't want to do it. Having Alzheimer's or dementia was the furthest thing from our mind. Mommy just needed rest. She's taking on too much. It was, and I said this last night, and I say it a lot, I remember when she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's because we were carrying on our life pretty much as we expected. We had actually gotten happy that, one, she was not sitting in a room anymore. She was coming out. She had a routine. She and my daughter would paint birdhouses, and we were happy. I was just excited. No, she wasn't answering questions the way she used to, but we were happy she wasn't in the room. And so for our annual, checkup that the doctor made us do, which I didn't think was necessary, took her to there, picked her up from home, took her to the doctor's, and he asked her what she watched on TV that day. And she immediately said, I can't remember. I watched a news show, which is what she watched. He asked her about it. She got defensive. Mind you, she's very, very smart. And she started asking him questions. What changed it was he asked the kid's age. And at first she was offended. She said, well, they're 3 and 2 years apart. He said, what are their ages? And she got frustrated, and she looked at me, and she said, why are we here? We need to leave. And he said, well, can you tell me their ages? And she started to cuss him out and cry. She looked at me as if to say, help me out. Help me out. And all I could do was cry. Because it became apparent that she didn't know her baby's ages. And he turned from her and he turned to me and he started talking. And it made her madder. And he was telling me, well, we're going to set her up for this and this. And I said, she can understand what you're saying. And he didn't pay any attention to me. And he said, okay, here's what you need to do. Have a good day. I'm crying, she's crying, and she's ready to hit him. So I'm grabbing her hand and says, sweetie, we got to go. And as we got into the car, I'm still crying, but she stopped. Completely forgot what he had asked her and why she was mad, other than the fact that she didn't like him. I remember it because I was to go to a debate that night, the first one of my third run for county executive. And I couldn't answer a question. I couldn't respond when attacked. And the articles the next day said, how does a guy who's run for county executive 3 times not be prepared for a simple debate? And all I could think was I wasn't prepared for life. Both emotionally and financially, I had not made any preparations of what my life would be like without my wife. What my children's life would be like. And had the doctor not told us to get tested, I wouldn't even bother to look at the notes that she'd left me. So one, getting tested. A couple of things, often, especially because I hold this position, people will come up to me and they will say, God, you're a hero. How do you do all that? First thing I'm thinking is, there is no other choice. The second thing is, if there is a hero out of any of this, it is my children. I say that because the reason I stand here and the reason I'm willing to go out and talk about it is because they insisted. My response was, it's none of your damn business. But theirs was, Daddy, we're not ashamed of Mommy. And we want people to know that we need not only more research, more dollars, and for you to use that position that God gave you to advocate and not be selfish about it. And the other is, and I will end with this, my 15-year-old at the time, my youngest daughter, who I give all kinds of, who gives me the most problems, I will say that. She is known for forgetting everything. She is quite smart. She is very much like her mother. She looks exactly like her mother. And I call her my wife's greatest project. Because when she was born, or really when she was about to go into middle school, my wife stopped working and came home and poured every ounce of knowledge into her. They were the ones who did math back and forth. They could construct sentences and deconstruct them. So she was her greatest project, and she loved them as she loved all her children, but especially that one. When we found out that my wife had this disease, by the fortune, I got elected county executive. So we didn't tell anybody what we were going through. For 2 years and several months, my 15-year-old, while in high school, while in a visual performing arts school, while maintaining a 3.0 average, would come home every day, right after school, to make sure Mommy ate and make sure Mommy was ready for bed so Daddy could work. In the morning, I would get her dressed. The 15-year-old would come home and watch her. On Friday night, she didn't go out to play. She didn't go out to parties. She came home with Mommy. If Daddy had a full day on Saturday and Sunday, she was with Mommy. She was a caregiver. And it wasn't until, and this is the cost on families, it wasn't until we started looking at her grades, a teacher called and said, we noticed that Quincy's grades are slipping. And is there something wrong? And I went to the school and I talked to her teachers and I said, because normally they say, well, we're actually looking for your wife. I said, well, she can't make it, but I'll come. And when I got there, I talked to the teachers. And they said, we've noticed she's tired in class. We noticed that she doesn't always turn in her homework, which I then said, that's not a different sign. But what I did was have a conversation with a 15-year-old and tell her that as much as she's helping Daddy out, we've got to bring somebody in. As much as she wants to take care of her mother the same way her mother took care of her, her mother would want her to live her life. I share that story, and I say it to you, is as my fellow panelist said, Dr. Gaskin, the cost is financial, but the cost is also emotional. How do you tell a 15-year-old who then becomes an 18-year-old that it's okay to go to college? That Mommy's fine, that we got it. How do you tell them that life will change every day for them, and you won't know when it changes? We experienced that for the last 2 weeks. Mommy was doing fine. We were planning a trip. We've gotten the right kind of medicine in there, balanced everything. I'd taken off for 2 weeks for the first time in almost 2.5 years. I was excited about going away. And my daughters were home for college, but they were about to go back to college. And just before my wife and I could leave on vacation, she developed seizures. Never happened before. It scared the complete life out of me and out of them. So we spent and she just got home yesterday, almost 2 weeks in the hospital. It took every ounce of strength that I had to convince my children they had to go back to school. That as everything we've learned since we began this journey is every day is a new normal. Every day changes. But as I also tell them, every day we are more blessed than most people who face this. We have more help, more research. And I want them to remember that. And I want them to feel that they must do something about that. And that the only way we're going to get the balance back is to do what the African American Network Against Alzheimer's slogan says: stand up, speak out, and overcome. We need more people dedicating their lives to finding a cure. We need more people making sure we have the resources to do the research to find out. And we especially need more African Americans and Latinos to participate in clinical trials. I'm lucky in the sense that I won't be nervous when I go home when I see her. I know that I have support for the things that I need to do. But I shouldn't have that simply because I'm county executive. I should have it because we live in the richest country in the world. We live in one of the wealthiest states with some of the brightest minds. And it's upon all of us to find a cure so that no one else has to go through this. No 15-year-old in the future has to take care of their parent. Thank you.